Russian President Vladimir Putin says he plans to recognize the independence of the self-proclaimed separatist republics of Donetsk and Lugansk in eastern Ukraine. President Putin made the announcement as he addressed the nation, laying out his reasoning for why Russia will make this move. Earlier, he told his security chiefs that tensions with the West over Ukraine were posing a looming threat to Moscow. Well, let's go over to Brussels now and join our correspondent Shona Murray. Shona, this move by the Russian president would appear to have only one outcome, and that's to raise tensions, which are already pretty much at breaking point.
Well, absolutely. But we also heard from Joseph Borrell, the EU's foreign policy chief, today in a press conference just about an hour ago, where he said that recognition, if that was going to happen tonight, and there was strong indications all throughout the day that it was going to happen, that he would then call for those sanctions, the package of sanctions that he's been working on, to be put on the table. Even though the recognition, obviously, of these two breakaway states isn't an act of war per se in the military sense, but that would be strong enough a move for the EU to react. We haven't heard from Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, or anyone else. This is also in the last hour, but you would expect the EU to respond fairly quickly in relation to this move by Vladimir Putin this evening.
Let's go back a bit and see, given what we've heard from the Western leaders, particularly the EU leaders at the Munich Security Conference over the weekend, the warnings were so clear to Moscow, and yet President Putin seems to be going down this path nonetheless. What's likely to be going through the minds of the EU leaders and their allies?
Well, obviously, unfortunately, that diplomacy may have failed, that the window for diplomatic interaction to withdraw from a war, that is very small or minimal at this point, and that the threats of the deep, wide, strong, massive sanctions against the Russian economy aren't working. So that's what I suppose we can glean from this, that Vladimir Putin is willing to take this chance regardless of how it impacts Russia, the Russian economy and the Russian people, and of course the Ukrainian people, because as we know 14,000 people were killed during the occupation of Crimea. And of course, if there's military action after this, it would result in people being killed, or at least people are fighting on the border and so on. So it's a threat to everybody's lives and the economies of those countries.
What can we say about the state of diplomatic channels at the moment? The French presidency said yesterday that every day without war is a day won. Are there still plans for both sides to speak?
Well, that was the hope, and that's really the only glimmer of hope we've had over the past few weeks, that while there was plans for diplomatic efforts, whether it's Chancellor Scholz in Kiev and in Moscow, or Emmanuel Macron on the phone and meeting with Putin, that those diplomatic channels were still open. But they don't seem to have worked, because every time there's been a strong formal meeting with Putin, he has escalated, whether it's the gathering of 30,000 troops in Belarus, and then the missile exercises that took place from that, the announcement that those troops are going to stay in Belarus, even though they're only supposed to be there for 10 days. We had Scholz speaking to Putin and Emmanuel Macron, Biden, and they come away from those discussions in the hope that maybe the next day there won't be an invasion, but here we are, a further escalation. So it's not a very optimistic outlook.
Shona Murray in Brussels, thanks very much for that analysis. Well, let's head to the Ukrainian capital now, Kiev, and we can join Sasha Vakulina. Sasha, we've heard what Vladimir Putin's been saying. How will Kiev view this address by the Russian president to recognize the independence of these regions in eastern Ukraine, which of course are Ukrainian territory?
Well, Alistair, Vladimir Putin went even beyond that. He gave his version of the history lesson, where he said that he does not recognize Ukraine's statehood and sovereignty. He said that Ukraine, modern Ukraine, was created by communist Russia, and it is a made-up state. He said Ukraine is an integral part of Russian history, and eastern Ukraine are ancient Russian land. Now, these are the claims and the announcement by Vladimir Putin, Russian president, that nobody expected to hear, frankly, from Moscow tonight. He really went beyond any claims and any announcement that, people feared here for. He also said, in a clear threat to Kyiv and to Ukrainian authorities, he said, so you want decommunization? Well, we are prepared to show you what it really means and what it's really like. The claims by a Russian president also went on saying that Ukrainian authorities for a long while have been doing the cherry picking, saying that they took everything from Russia for granted and never appreciated it, and they were always on the receiving end, taking everything, the support, the respect, the financial aid for years from Russia, and never appreciating or respecting that. He also said that Russia gave billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in various ways of financial support to Ukraine between 1991 and 2013. It's interesting that he mentioned 2013 here, of course, because in 2014 we saw the pro-European Maidan revolution here in Kyiv and in Ukraine, when Ukrainians clearly stated that they want to go pro-West, that they want to join the European Union, they want to join NATO, and this is the course of Ukraine, of this country, that is now enshrined in the constitution of Ukraine. So today's decision also means that Russia could now openly put its troops and its forces into eastern Ukraine, into those occupied territories. Mind you, for years, Russia never accepted the fact that there might be some official Russian troops and Russian forces on Ukraine's soil in the east. Now they might try to do that. And of course, the question goes into how far they would try then to expand those borders of the occupied territories in Donbass. These are the so-called self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. The big questions here tonight in Kyiv are also when and how Western countries, Western allies of Ukraine would react. They have been warning for days and weeks of the possible invasion. This recognition might open the way for Russia to go for that invasion, to put their forces and troops there. When will they be ready to impose those sanctions? And what is in those sanctions? Well, we've heard so many details about the possible threat, the attack, the invasion, the further invasion of Russia, with the concrete dates by the West over these past weeks. We still need to hear what are the details in all those sanctions, when are they ready, and when will the West impose them?